It's a good bounce back win for us today. I thought we started the game with the right tone on the defensive end. And so that was
The air in the press conference room was thick, not with celebration, but with a charged, almost metallic tension. The head coach stood behind the polished podium, her hands gripping its edges, knuckles pale under the fluorescent lights. She had just delivered a post-game analysis of a routine exhibition victory, her words flat and procedural. "It's a good bounce-back win for us today. I thought we started the game with the right tone on the defensive end. And so that was Her sentence trailed off. A clumsy, uncharacteristic stumble. She cleared her throat, looked down at her notes, and then raised her eyes directly into the bank of cameras. The previous soft focus on defense vanished, replaced by a glacial, deliberate intensity. In that suspended second, the basketball world didn't just lean in, it froze. After months of an uncomfortable, politically loaded silence, after a season of subtle jabs in the press, and following the most controversial roster snub in modern sports history, the impossible was being made manifest. Team USA Basketball, the monolithic guardian of the women's game, wasn't just reluctantly inviting Caitlyn Clark to its training camp roster. In a move that instantly vaporized the previous narrative, they were handing her the keys to the entire franchise. The coach's next words were spoken not with pride, but with the cadence of a state announcement. Effective immediately. The leadership of this program will embody a new direction. We are naming Caitlyn Clark as the captain of the United States women's national basketball team. The silence that followed was absolute, a vacuum that sucked the oxygen from the room. Analysts watching live stumbled over their prepared segues. Former players mid-tweet found their thumbs frozen over their screens. Fans across the country stared, slack-jawed, at their devices. The very same coaching staff and administrative body that had famously, publicly, claimed Clark wasn't ready, that she needed to pay her dues, that her style might disrupt a championship chemistry, had not only reversed course, but had catapulted her to the very pinnacle of team hierarchy. It was a seismic, bewildering power shift. But to mistake this for a heartwarming tale of forgiveness, of a prodigy finally earning her rightful place, was to miss the forest for a single, starkly isolated tree. The story was not in the title. She was given the word captain stitched over the heart. The real unsettling drama was woven into the bizarre, tension-strangled delivery of the decision itself, and in the shadowy, unanswered question of who, or what, had truly forced the hand of an institution known for its unyielding tradition. This wasn't an anointment. It felt, to anyone watching with a discerning eye, like a surreal and calculated surrender. You would expect news of this magnitude, the passing of the torch, for the most dominant sports dynasty on the planet, to arrive wrapped in ceremony. A carefully curated press release from USA Basketball, laden with quotes from veterans welcoming their new leader. A celebratory social media campaign with glossy videos of past captains smiling beside her. A unified front, projecting strength and seamless transition. This was none of that. It came instead from the lips of the head coach during a routine media availability, a setting witnesses later described as tense, surreal, and chillingly cold. There was no grand stage, no smiling Federation officials flanking her. It was just the coach, the podium, and a room of reporters who had been expecting questions about zone defense and rotation patterns. Her body language was rigid, her smile absent. She looked dead into the cameras, recited the fact of the appointment, and offered no elaboration on why, no praise for Clark's presumed leadership qualities. It was a statement of cold transaction. Just over a year prior, this same coach had been the chief architect of a very different narrative. She spoke of chemistry, of trust built over years, of the sacred timeline, where rookies, no matter their talent or popularity, waited their turn before stepping onto the global stage. The message was clear. The system was sacrosanct. The collective, forged in the fires of past Olympics, was greater than any individual star. Now, without warning, without any visible evolution in that philosophy, the narrative had performed a desperate, whiplash-inducing pivot. The language of exclusion had been abruptly swapped for the language of coronation. It felt jarring. It felt unmoored from reason. It felt, above all, forced. And the most telling evidence was not in the coach's words, but in the reaction shot of the subject herself. In the background footage, Caitlyn Clark was visible, seated slightly off to the side. Her eyes, usually so fierce and focused, were wide, blinking rapidly as if trying to process a startling optical illusion. Her posture was unnaturally stiff, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. There was no beaming smile, no humble nod of acceptance. There was only a profound, visible confusion. She looked, in a word, blindsided. The promotion, in that moment, seemed to land not as an honor, but as a sudden, heavy weight dropped onto her shoulders. This was not the look of an athlete grasping a dreamed-of prize. It was the look of a soldier hearing her name called for a mission she never volunteered for. The dissonance was deafening. The contrast between the coach's icy delivery and the magnitude of the announcement created a narrative vacuum, one instantly filled with a single screaming question: why? Why now? Why like this? To answer that, one must venture behind the sealed doors of the preceding 48 hours into the pressurized boardrooms and private offices where the fate of the program was likely wrestled over. Because when the very gatekeepers who once barred your entrance suddenly present you with the crown, it ceases to be a simple accolade. You are forced to wonder, is this a victory snatched from the jaws of exclusion, or is it a gilded trap meticulously laid? To comprehend the staggering shock of this moment, one must rewind the tape to the summer of 2024. That period was not merely a roster selection process. It was a cultural war, a line drawn deeply in the sand of the sport. Leaving Caitlyn Clark off the Olympic team was never framed as a pure basketball decision. The numbers, the impact, the sheer gravitational pull she exerted on the game argued too powerfully against that. Instead, it was packaged as a necessary lesson in hierarchy, a deliberate upholding of an old-world order. The arguments broadcasted were multifaceted and delivered with aggressive certainty. She was too young. She was too inexperienced on the international stage. The physicality of seasoned professionals would overwhelm her slender frame. But the most potent, the most resonant criticism was the one about chemistry. The leadership core of Team USA veterans who had bled together for a decade, who had shared hotel rooms and gold medal podiums, possessed a rhythm, a telepathic understanding that could not, must not, be disrupted by a brilliant, if stylistically unique, rookie. Her inclusion, they implied, would introduce a discordant note into a perfectly harmonized symphony. The public fallout was thermonuclear. Fan outrage was a palpable force. Pundits screamed hypocrisy on cable news. The digital sphere became a raging firestorm of debate. Yet, the fortress held. The coaching staff and selection committee stood resolutely behind their decision. Their arms crossed against the tidal wave of public sentiment. They went to Paris. They won the gold medal as they often did, and they returned, medals gleaming, wearing expressions of profound vindication. The victory was their ultimate rebuttal. It proved, they believed, that the system was infallible. That tradition, seniority, and insulated cohesion would always trump individual stardom. The message was cemented. No player was bigger than the program. The program was the star. So, fast forward to the present day. What variable had changed? How does one bridge the intellectual chasm between "she disturbs our chemistry" and "she is our captain" in less than 18 months? Did Caitlyn Clark somehow acquire a decade of veteran savvy overnight? Had there been a seismic, heartfelt change of opinion among the old guard? A collective epiphany that they should step aside? The answers were plainly obvious. No, and absolutely not. The basketball reasons, the critiques about her defense, her fit within a specific system had not meaningfully evolved. Her statistical dominance had only continued. The only landscape that had undergone a radical tectonic shift was the landscape of leverage. And this brings us to the shadowy, often unglamorous engine that truly drives modern professional sports: the ruthless calculus of commerce and survival. Emerging rumors, leaked from the opaque corridors of sports governance, insist this 180-degree turn was not a basketball decision at all. It was, these whispers suggest, a blunt force business survival tactic, orchestrated not by coaches in tracksuits, but by the suits, the high-level executives at the television networks, and the massive athletic sponsors whose money forms the financial lifeblood of the entire USA basketball operation. The evidence, when viewed through a corporate lens, becomes stark. Consider the numbers. The arrival of Caitlyn Clark in the WNBA had triggered a financial and cultural explosion previously thought impossible. Sold-out arenas transformed into fever-pitched cathedrals. Merchandise sales vaporized historical records. Television ratings for her games began to rival, and sometimes surpass, those of NBA regular season broadcasts. A new, young, and fiercely engaged demographic was flooding the sport. Yet, while the league was experiencing this unprecedented boom, the national team, the supposed pinnacle of the sport, was facing a concerning stagnation. Outside the once-every-4 years Olympic fervor, interest in exhibition games and World Cup qualifications was flatlining. The old guard had won gold in Paris, but they were losing the far more perpetual war for ratings, relevance, and market share. The dynasty was becoming a museum piece revered, but not necessarily watched. The speculation, from well-placed insiders, is that the organization received a non-negotiable ultimatum from its financial partners. The narrative is one of high-stakes meetings between network presidents and federation heads, where spreadsheets were more important than stat sheets. The executives allegedly presented a simple, brutal, and irrefutable truth. People tune in to watch Caitlyn Clark. Period. Casual viewers, the millions who had been captivated by her story, her audacity, her deep-range logos, would not watch a Team USA game if she was absent or relegated to a minor role. The value of the broadcast rights, the attractiveness to sponsors, the very financial model of the program, all of it was now inextricably tied to her presence and her prominence. Thus, the coach at the podium, in this reading, was less a visionary and more a messenger. She was reading from a script drafted in a corporate boardroom, her stiff delivery betraying the discomfort of an employee enacting a mandate from her ultimate employers. The lack of warmth, the absence of genuine enthusiasm, wasn't personal animosity. It was the demeanor of someone performing a necessary but distasteful piece of business. They didn't just need Clark's talent. They desperately needed her gravity, the Caitlyn effect, to pull the national team out of its niche and into the blistering center of the mainstream sports spotlight, to ensure its relevance and funding in a rapidly changing ecosystem. But the story deepens, becoming more psychologically complex and personally fraught. In the 24 hours before the public announcement, leaks suggest a clandestine meeting took place. This was not a team huddle or a group Zoom. Sources describe a summons. The coach called Caitlyn Clark into a private office at the training facility, a space deliberately isolated from the ears and eyes of her teammates. The mood in that room, according to those whispering about it, was not one of hostility, but of something more potent: desperation. The rumor is that the coach, perhaps for the first time, laid bare the program's vulnerabilities. The world was catching up. The European powerhouses, France, Spain, Belgium, were no longer just athletic. They were sophisticated, tactical, and unafraid. The gap was closing. Simultaneously, the legendary core of Team USA was aging, their physical edges inevitably softening. In this telling, the coach's pitch was stark. The team needed Clark not merely as a shooter, not just as a scoring guard, but as a shield. They needed the blinding wattage of her star power to deflect attention from the team's creeping internal flaws, the aging roster, the tactical adjustments needed. They needed her to sell the tickets, to secure the primetime slots, to generate the revenue that would allow the program to continue operating at its expected elite level. The captaincy, then, was framed not purely as a recognition of leadership, but as a crucial function. She was to be the charismatic figurehead who would fund and facilitate the very system that had recently excluded her. It was, by all accounts, an admission of defeat, dressed in the ceremonial robes of a promotion. Imagine the surreal, psychologically inverted dynamic in that room. The same authority figure who had publicly endorsed your exclusion, framing it as a necessary sacrifice for the greater good, now sat across the desk, her posture likely less defiant, her tone supplicant, asking only you to save them. The power had not just shifted, it had completely inverted. Clark, according to reports, listened intently, saying little. She did not ask for the title. She did not lobby for it. It was presented as a necessity, a duty, a burden to be assumed for the salvation of the very institution that had spurned her. If the announcement was a nuclear detonation, then the Team USA locker room is now ground zero, suffering from the silent, pervasive fallout. One must understand the profound, earned hierarchy within that sanctum. This is a coven of warriors who have shared a decade of sacrifices, brutalizing training camps, endless flights, the intense pressure of representing a nation that expects only gold. They have a deep, unspoken pecking order, built on shared scars and mutual respect. Within it are multi-time gold medalists, MVP award winners, and future Hall of Famers who have patiently waited their turn, believing the captain's armband would one day be their rightful reward for years of loyal service. Now, envision the emotional cataclysm for those veterans. The player they were told just a year ago was a threat to their collective success. The rookie, whose style they may have privately questioned. The outsider whose unprecedented fame perhaps felt like a slight to their own grunt work. That same person has now been appointed their boss. The reports emerging are ominous. The team's group chats, usually buzzing with banter and logistics, have fallen into a dead silence. Social media, typically a platform for supportive emoji-laden congratulations, shows a void. No, welcome to the leadership club. Posts from the established stars. No public endorsements. Just a blank, echoing quiet. In the hyper-connected world of modern athletics, such silence is not passive. It is a deafening roar of dissent. The issue transcends mere jealousy. It strikes at the core of respect and legitimacy. The veterans perceive the captaincy as a sacred title, earned through blood, sweat, and years of answered bells. To see it seemingly awarded by marketing algorithms and TV executives to boost Nielsen ratings feels like a profound desecration of the culture they built. It is viewed as the death of the meritocracy they believed in. Whispers now suggest that some of these cornerstone players are contemplating sitting out the upcoming World Cup cycle or accelerating retirement plans. The prospect of taking strategic cues, of having their execution questioned by a 2-3-year-old in her first major international tournament is, for some, an untenable insult. The locker room is now fractured into two distinct simmering camps. The younger players, those who entered the league in the Clark era, likely see this as the inevitable and exciting future, a validation of a new paradigm. The veterans see it as the ultimate betrayal, a surrender of their legacy to the altar of monetized popularity. The coaching staff, in its attempt to save the program from external irrelevance, has inadvertently sparked a civil war within its own roster. The dynasty now faces a threat far more dangerous than any foreign opponent: internal disintegration. Amid this maelstrom, the central question remains: how is Caitlyn Clark processing this gilded yet poisoned chalice? Sources close to her indicate she entered that secret meeting braced for condemnation. The text summoning her to the coach's office likely triggered a familiar anxiety. Had she spoken too freely in an interview? Were they, in a final act of old guard assertion, going to cut her from the training camp pool altogether to re-establish the old order? When the offer, or more accurately, the declaration of the captaincy came, her reported reaction was telling. There was no jubilation, no triumphant flash of a smile. Her hesitation was palpable. She possesses a preternatural basketball IQ, but she has also developed a razor-sharp media IQ. She understands the symbolic weight of the patch. She knows it places a colossal target on her back, not just from opponents eager to dethrone the new American captain, but from within her own locker room, where skepticism may curdle into silent resistance. She is acutely aware that she now stands squarely in the blame nexus. Should the team's chemistry falter, the narrative will be, Clark failed to unite them. If veterans underperform or exhibit discord, it will be, Clark lost the locker room. Any loss, any stumble on the world stage, will no longer be laid first at the feet of the coaching staff or the system, but at the feet of the new, young captain. The scrutiny will be microscopic, unrelenting, and unforgiving. Clark accepted the role. as arguably any Patriot athlete would, because saying no to Team USA is virtually unthinkable. But she is not walking into this naively. Insiders suggest she is proceeding with her eyes wide open. Her demeanor, that of a chess player who sees the entire board, recognizes the traps and must play the game set before her regardless. She is the leader of a team that may, in part, resent her leadership. She must now navigate the impossible task of commanding respect that was not organically granted through shared time, but mandated from above. It is a perilous tightrope walk over a pit of professional and personal peril. This precarious reality feeds into the most disturbing theory circulating among seasoned sports analysts, the concept of the glass cliff, a term borrowed from corporate sociology. It describes the phenomenon where women and other underrepresented groups are disproportionately promoted to leadership positions during times of crisis, when the risk of failure is highest. They are set up to lead when the ship is already taking on water, providing a convenient scapegoat if it sinks. Apply this lens to Team USA. The rest of the world is demonstrably closing the gap. The dynasty is in its most vulnerable state in a generation. The transition from the old guard to the new is fraught with competitive risk. By installing Caitlyn Clark as captain now, at this precise moment of maximum volatility, is the establishment perhaps unconsciously setting her up to take the fall? If Team USA were to lose the next World Cup or struggle in pre-Olympic exhibitions, the narrative framework is already pre-built. The old guard and their supporters can simply nod grimly and say, "See? We told you so. You rushed the timeline. You prioritized hype over harmony. You put a rookie in charge and shattered the culture. This is the result." The coaches and veterans can absolve themselves. The institution can claim it listened to the fans, and it backfired, thereby vindicating their original exclusionary stance. It becomes a perverse win-win for the establishment. If Clark triumphs against the odds, they are geniuses for adapting. If she fails, they were right all along. For Clark, it is a near impossible scenario. She must not only play superstar-level basketball, but also manage a potentially fractured team, shoulder the expectations of a nation, and silence a chorus of doubters, all while knowing that any misstep will be magnified and used to indict not just her, but the very idea of her accelerated ascension. The captaincy, in this light, resembles less a reward and more a sacrificial altar. The public reaction to the announcement has been a mirror of the team's internal split, amplified to a screaming, billion-decibel pitch across the internet. The digital arena has become a war zone. On one front are Clark Stan accounts, the army of new fans she has brought to the women's game. They are celebrating what they see as long overdue justice, the inevitable triumph of transcendent talent over ossified politics. To them, this is the moment the gatekeepers were finally forced to bend the knee to a force they could no longer ignore. Social media floods with celebratory edits of Clark photoshopped in a captain's armband, with clips of her deep threes set to triumphant music. They mock the coach's icy demeanor and demand public apologies from the silent veterans. On the opposing front stand the purists, the longtime devotees who have followed the women's game for decades, through its lean years and hard-won growth. They are incensed. They see this as the final surrender of the sport's sanctity to the gods of virality and commerce. They argue, with passion, that a second-year professional, for all her gifts, possesses no legitimate claim to captain a team of grown women who are legends in their own right. They believe this decision spits on the history of the program, reducing a legacy built on sweat and collective sacrifice to a single, marketable headline. The comment sections beneath every article, every tweet, every video are carnage. Accusations fly. The coach is a puppet. The veterans are jealous, bitter losers. Clark is an entitled media creation. It is ugly, deeply personal, and utterly devoid of nuance. Yet, in a final twist of irony, this blistering engagement is precisely the outcome the suits desired. They did not necessarily need a positive consensus. They needed fervor, attention, and relentless conversation. They needed Team USA to be the topic. In that brutally cynical sense, the mission has already been accomplished. The program is back in the daily discourse, albeit as a subject of intense controversy. Revisiting that fateful press conference with the benefit of hindsight and these context clues, the nonverbal communication screams a truth no prepared statement could conceal. When the coach made the announcement, she did not turn to Clark with a smile, placing a hand on her shoulder. She stared at her notes. She looked at the journalists. She deliberately avoided meeting the eyes of the young woman she was ostensibly elevating. The act felt like a delivery of terms, not a celebration. And Clark, for her part, sat with her arms often crossed, a classic posture of self-protection. Her answers to the few questions she faced were textbook and clipped. "It's an honor. I'm ready to work. We have a great group." The words were correct, but the affect was flat. The smile, when it came, was perfunctory, never reaching her eyes, which held a watchful, cautious gleam. The easy, joking rapport that often exists between a coach and a star player was utterly absent. The silence between them was a third entity in the room. Most glaring of all was who was not there. Where were the former captains? Where were the veteran leaders, the Brianna Stewarts, or the Diana Taurasi's of years past, to physically pass the torch, to publicly offer their blessing? Their absence was a thunderous statement. The stage held only two people: the coach, representing an institution compelled to change, and Caitlyn Clark, the agent of that change. Alone on an island, that solitary image is the perfect metaphor for the current state of Team USA. A new, commercially anointed star, isolated by the very title meant to integrate her, standing apart from the team she is now tasked with leading. So, where does this leave us? The training camp opens next week. This is when theory collides with reality. The world will watch, with an obsessive, analytical gaze, every single interaction. Practice footage, usually a mundane affair, will be dissected like Kremlinology. Do veterans pass her the ball in scrimmages, or look her off? Do they huddle around her during breaks, or form separate, distant clusters? Do they respond immediately to her directives, or is there a hesitant, fractional delay? Lip readers will be employed to decode sideline conversations. Body language experts will monetize breakdowns of every high five, every turn back, every glance. Every missed shot Clark takes will be a referendum on her readiness for the burden. Every turnover will spawn a headline about leadership pressure. She has faced immense pressure before the NCAA scoring record chase, the hyper-scrutiny of the draft, the physical targeting in her rookie WNBA season. But this is a different beast. This is the psychological pressure of leading peers who may doubt your right to lead, of unifying a divided tribe, of performing flawlessly under a microscope while knowing that a significant faction of your own ecosystem is waiting for you to confirm their doubts. This decision's ramifications extend far beyond the national team locker room. It sends a seismic shockwave through the entire professional landscape of women's basketball. It is a stark, official signal that the old rules are being rewritten. Seniority and institutional loyalty are no longer the sole, unimpeachable currencies. Marketability, cultural impact, and the ability to drive economic engines are now formalized elements of valuation. For other stars in the league, this is a clarion call. The protected hierarchy is gone. The game is now played on two courts simultaneously, the hardwood and the attention economy. This may breed further resentment, or it may ignite a new, hyper-competitive era where players strive to amplify both their athletic and their brand power, leading to a more aggressive, more dramatic, and more financially vibrant league. The naming of Caitlyn Clark as captain of Team USA is the most high-stakes gamble in the history of women's sports. It is a decision born not from organic sporting evolution, but from financial imperative and fan-driven insurrection. It was executed with a stunning, telltale awkwardness that reveals deep institutional schism. The coach has been made to swallow a bitter pill of public reversal. The veterans are marinating in a broth of betrayal. And Caitlyn Clark, the phenomenal talent who was once the outsider, now stands squarely in the center of the storm. A flag of uncertain allegiance thrust into her hand. The question that will define the next era is simple, yet its answer is terrifyingly complex. Is this the dawn of a new golden age, where fresh genius merges with veteran wisdom to create an unstoppable super team? Or is this the catalyst for the long-dreaded implosion? The moment the relentless pressure fractures the dynasty from within, leading to a fall from grace on the world's biggest stage. The gamble has been placed. The dice are in the air, and the entire sports world holds its breath, waiting to see where they land.